Hello, welcome. My name is Manuel from Kata Studios. This is our formal instructional introduction to Adobe Illustrator. So in this particular course, I'm going to guide you through every basic thing you need to know about this tool in setting it up and in using it. Every single little thing that I do. So first thing, let's find out where this installation file is located. So when you install Illustrator for the first time, you need to hit on the Start button. You'll find that particular tiny icon from here. So when you click on it, it opens the Illustrator and you can start with your designer. But the problem is whenever you close this particular tool, you don't find it anymore. You have to go through this rigorous process to get it up and running again. So to save yourself that hassle, click on option while the app is open and make sure you click on pin to taskbar. Once you do that, it pins this particular element here so that the next time you want to open it, you don't need to find where the file installation application is. So that is it for the basic. The next thing I do whenever I install Illustrator is to change the theme of the Illustrator interface. And to do that, we need to get to edit, click on preference and scroll down till you find user interface. So click on that. You can also get to user interface from anywhere from here. Whenever you get to general, you can still get to user interface. All of that is in this tab. So you can go to a little darker gray. You can go to a brighter. I wonder who used this old 90s and we don't want to use that. We like to go with the basic. This is the default that comes with Illustrator, but I would love you to use this dark theme because it makes everything cemented and makes everything look more unique and easy in the eyes. So when you're done, click on OK. One more thing I usually do is to save my preference. Saving a preference in Illustrator means you want each time you open the Illustrator, it have all those settings you already assigned to it. We are going to come to that in a little while. So after that, the next thing I do is to click on the option at the top right corner and switch this from Essential to Essential Classic. The reason I do this is because of these tabs from here, this particular elements tabs. So when we click on Essential, what happens from the left corner? We click on Essential tab and we have this switched and we have a whole new bunch of suites of design tools. We have this bunch of design tools available for us now. We don't need to start scrambling all around the editor panel to find the rest of them. So switch from Essential to Essential Classic so that you can have your work very well organized. Okay. Now, if you want to know the version of the Illustrator you're using or Photoshop you're using, click on Help. So click on About Illustrator. You're going to see from here we have the date from 1987, which is the actual date the Illustrator was actually announced, till 2023. So this is 2023 Illustrator version we are using. So now let's learn a few things as beginners and also intermediates. Now let's learn how to merge two elements together so you can move them around whenever you want to. But by the way, before we get into that, let me teach you what most of these tools are. The first one here is called the Select tool. You use it in selecting elements. Second one is called the Direct Select tool. We use it in selecting direct elements. Let me explain those two very quickly. So for instance, we have two elements from here. We have number one. Let's change the color of this to blue. No, I like a little bit of orange. Fine. So we have number one orange and we have number two over here. Let's change this color to darker orange. So fine. We have the brighter orange and we have the darker orange. Now remember, whenever you're zooming in Photoshop, it doesn't care whether you selected an element, it will zoom to the center. But whenever you select an element and you zoom in Illustrator, it zooms to that element you selected. You get the point very clearly. So we zoom closely, the same format in Photoshop, Control and plus. We will zoom closely in and we zoom closely out. Okay. So now in this particular element, we can select on this element itself alone. We are good to go. Select on this element alone. We are good to go. But when these two elements are grouped, okay, this is not grouping. What I did is not grouping. What I did is multi-selection. Multi-selection is when you directly select all elements at the same time. We can select as many elements. As you can see, it have already encompassed all the elements at the background. So multi-selection is when you want to select multiple elements at the same time, but that is not grouping. You can now drag it around, but whenever you click outside that element and use either the direct selection tool or the selection tool to move one, it moves. But when we group, look what happens. Now we select these two elements with multi-select and we hold on the Control and G. That's the keyboard shortcut to group elements. When you select all elements you want to group together, click on Control and G. Automatically these two elements are grouped. So when we click out, even when we select on any of these elements to move, it moves the two of them. You get the point? So we move the two of them. Now, where direct selection tool works is that when we select the direct selection tool, we are selecting only this element to rearrange it inside of that group. So that the next time we click on the selection tool and move it around, everything will move according to the new selection style sheet. I hope you get that very clearly. So the direct selection tool is responsible for moving elements irrespective of their parental control. I use the word parental style control, which means these elements have been styled in a way that they are grouped and can't be moved around easily. But when you use direct selection tool, you can actually move them separately without affecting the shape, the environment, the area, the state of the previous one. You get the point? Very good. So the selection tool helps us in moving elements around whenever we grouped them together, all elements at the same time. For instance, this element I see, they are grouped together. That's why we can move all of them together. But when we use the direct selection tool and we click out, we can now separate this one. We can now separate this one. We can select on all of this and we separate them like this and so on. And by the way, you can also undo what you did. We made a mistake. To undo, click on Ctrl Z, Ctrl, just keep clicking on Ctrl Z to revert to what you've done before. That's how to undo the mistake you've done. To redo the mistake again, hold on Ctrl Shift and Z. You redo the mistake again. You get the point. Ctrl Z, undo, Ctrl Shift and Z to redo. Very good. Those are the basic things we need to know. Now, the next thing I would like us to learn is how to draw a shape like this. Very simple in Illustrator. Select on the rectangular tool, you can draw a shape. When you go to that rectangular tool, click Option, right click on your mouse. You're going to see these options, okay, to select some more other star. You can select on the star tool to create a star from there. You can select on the ellipse tool to create a circle. Now, when you're creating a circle, ellipse tool is not a circle tool. There's not like a circle tool in Illustrator, okay? Ellipse tool is a tool which you use in creating whether it's a spherical shape, a circle shape, whatever shape you want to create. But it depends on the style you want to do. Okay, so for instance, I want to create an egg. We use the ellipse tool. Okay, we can now select and make it like so. If we drag it up, you see how it is. Drag it down, drag it up, drag it down. Now watch what happens. Whenever we get to a particular area, we have this cross at the center, which means this is a perfect circle. The same thing happens when you are trying to draw a rectangle. When we try to draw a rectangle, nothing happens. When we try to draw a square, we have this box at the center, which means we have gotten to the snap point. This is called the snap point. Snap point means the width size and the height size is now equal. That's the same thing that happens whenever you are dealing with that with a circle. Okay, so now whenever we are creating a circle, we create a sphere, but whenever we drag around to make a circle, perfect circle, it snaps in. So that's the snap point. So what if you don't have that particular freedom of that leverage to do all of this? Okay, you want to create a perfect circle or a perfect square. All you need to do is to hold your shift key in your keyboard. Hold on the shift key, though there are multiple more tips and tricks I'll be pulling out in the subsequent time as reels, very short reels in our Instagram handle. If you don't follow that in the description of this video. Okay, pulling up subsequent shots on tips and tricks in Illustrator and Photoshop on these basic things. I'm just trying to show you a few things around. Okay, and while we are dragging, hold on the shift key. While you drag, hold on the shift key, and we create a perfect circle. So this circle doesn't mind whether you are using going up or down or making mistake. Once we leave the shift key, look at what happens. You get the point now. Once we hold the shift key, once we leave the shift key, once we hold the shift key. So these are very important things. Why I'm talking about all these basic things is because squares and circles are very important or vital elements in our designer, especially Illustrator, because this is where we create all our vector elements. So in squares, we want to make these edges curved. Select on it, just select and drag in each of these edges. Okay, for instance, we want to make only one part rounded and the other part pointed. Select on that once, click on it once, okay, then the second one, drag it. Okay, just click on it once and the second one, drag it. Very simple. That's no big deal. Now when you want to join two elements together, for instance, you want to join these two elements together, or you want to join this star and this circle, put it together, select on these two elements. You're going to find the option. Let's go to Windows. Here we're going to see many more options available. These are the options that we can still add here. We're going to talk about this in a little while. In a very little while, we're going to talk about this. Okay, so we'll go over here. We're going to come to, let's scroll down till we find Pathfinder. Okay, click on the Pathfinder. In the Pathfinder, we can actually drag this one now. Let's drag this one to this part. Okay, we have it here. We can also say, okay, the Pathfinder, we want to keep it. We want to keep this particular Pathfinder. We want to pull it in here. Can drag it in here. You see, you can still drag anyone outside to this particular part. Just play around, anything you want to do. The library, we don't want it, close it. Layer, we want it. Properties, we want it. We want to put the properties to the right side. You can do that from there. See what I'm doing from here? Okay. Now the Pathfinder, I want to pull it in there. Just drag it and place it where you want it to be. So the Pathfinder, we want to join these two elements. All you need to do is to use this element to join the Pathfinder. See, that star and that circle is the same thing. Now, this is not grouping. This is merging. Merging means you are joining these two elements together and they can't be separated easily, except you Control Z or undo what you have done before. Okay, so there are other ways also to join elements which are more advanced. I'm going to teach you guys. Don't worry, in the future we're going to do a lot more tips and tricks on how to join elements and still separate them easily and join them easily without having this constraint of undoing. Because when you can undo an element in Illustrator or Photoshop is when it is relatively close to the timeline, like the proximity of the thing you have done is close. What if you have done it countless time in the future and undoing it now will now spoil something you have done before? For instance, we merged these two elements from here. We merge them and then we select on these two elements and we moved it here. And we want to unmerge this one. We must have to click on Ctrl Z to first of all undo the move which have moved this element before it can undo the one we have done before. So I'm going to teach you guys how to also override that and remove elements without actually altering the other stuffs you have done. Okay, so that is simply how to do those basic things. Now let's create a new artboard. We never talked about that in a while before we come back to these ones. So to create a new artboard, we hold on Control and N. The same thing we did in Photoshop, or we do in Photoshop. Then from here, we can pick on points or we pick on pixels. Okay, whichever one is okay for you. So if you pick on pixels, we can now select whatever pixel size we want from here and we can proceed with editing. The best pixel size I would suggest you pick is 500 to 1000. If you are creating content you want to use for social media, and usually there will be a playlist, a Photoshop playlist beneath this. I will suggest you watch a video before this, Introduction to Illustrator and Photoshop. I think I did that. Okay, how to actually create and save elements in Photoshop. I explained all of these sizes inside of that, so I'm not going to go over this again and again. And by the way, make sure you switch this CMYK to RGB always. Okay, then you can create your element and proceed with the rest. A4, you can create A3 letter, whatever size you want to create. And we click on OK. Let's just create one. Then we click, make sure you switch this to, I don't know why that switches always. Click on that, you can select how many artboard you want to add. If we select on 3 artboard, you're going to see what happens. We leave it at pixels and we click on create. So you see, we created 3 artboards, which means after designing on this, we can continue with this. Maybe we want to design a paper bag, we want to design maybe multiple layers of flyer or social media slide or carousel, all of that. So we can do that. So to also close elements, you can close the artboard you don't want to use again. Click on the edge to cancel it out. Okay, so once you're done with an element, maybe you want to save this work. Like for instance, me, I create this, I call this style guide. The style guide helps me to fasten up my work. For instance, I don't need to create icons every time I want to create icon. I don't need to create, let me select on this and zoom. I don't need to create these brushes or these arrows anytime I want to add a particular effect in my design. I just come here, I drag one of them and I pull it in. I don't need to create all these icons again. I have all of them created, and all I need to do is to just come in and drag them in. And you must have seen this when I use it again and again in my design, web design project presentations. All I need to do is to come select on the text and change the name of the website, then select on all of this, or just select on it and then move it and add it at the top of that particular website mockup. So I call this style guide, and why I do this, I save this. I have been saving this for a very long time. You can also create your own so that you have a reference point where you can pick up elements and then reuse them again and again and again without stressing or straining yourself. Okay, so that's what this is called. So why I talked about this is we have to save this now so that I can use it again to save your element as AI, so you can reuse it again even in another PC. Click on Control and Alternate, then click on Save. Control Alt and Save. If you are using Mac PC, you can use the Command and Alt, then Save. Save S stands for save. You can name it to whatever you want and leave it as AI or leave it as EPS. Okay, or even leave it as SVG. Either of these formats will also work in any Illustrator you import it. You can also save it as PDF, whatever format. So when you're done, click on save and the file will be in the desktop. Next time you want to use it, double click on it, it opens. I'll suggest you watch Photoshop first before you come to Illustrator. Okay, very quickly, the first one I want us to learn is how to replace images. Okay, these are not what we should be talking about now, but let's just do that quickly. If you want to replace this image to another image, all you need to do is select on the element, go to the layer panel. And by the way, this is layer panel. And layer panel, you have a drop down. Unlike Photoshop, this one have drop down. Drop down, you can click on it. It have multiple drop down where you can see more content. And to know the one you are selecting on, you are going to see these tiny blue dots at the edge. That's the one, how to detect the one you are actually working on. So we're going to expand this. What we want to select is the image only. Okay, select on the image only and head over to file. And in file, we have to scroll down till we find place. Select on place. Then we have to get to the place where the image is, maybe the desktop or wherever. Select on the image you want to place. Let's select it on this image. Once you select on that image, make sure it's hit on replace, and once you hit on that, click on paste, and boom, we got it. So that's how to actually replace images in Illustrator. You want to replace images very quickly, you do that. And to add a new text, you have the text element from here. You can click on it and you can add your new text. You can zoom in closely and you can start typing. So change your text. Click on the text element, select on all text element, make sure you're still selecting on the text element. If you don't select the text element, even if you select the text and you don't select the text element, in most cases you might not see the text to change it. Okay, but if you see it, depend on the version of Illustrator you're using. So we want to change this to poppins, and we can now select on the text size, the thickness, and whatever from here, and we are good to go. Can select this, the thickness, whether italic or whatever style. Then we can increase the size from here. But to avoid stressing ourselves, to increase our size, you can hold the shift key in your keyboard and drag from one edge. Okay, but if you don't hold the shift key, see what happens. It skews your image, your text. So this is the problem most beginners have. They skew either their image or their text. This is applicable for both images and text, whatever element in Illustrator, in Photoshop. In Photoshop, you don't even need to hold the shift key. You just have to try. In Photoshop, you don't need to hold the shift key. But if you know what you're doing, you actually know the point where this is okay. As you can see, this is okay from there. And if you are dragging from the bottom part, see what you're going to find. And as a professional, you know the width that is perfect. But as a beginner, you don't know the width that is perfect. Like this is the perfect width of this particular text. Okay, but you as a beginner won't know the perfect width, and you end up with something like this, and you conclude that the design is done. So to avoid that problem, you just have to avoid the problem. We don't even need to get to the edit toolbar because all the toolbar we need are already here. So you can see option to edit because all of them are here already. Anyone you want to click to expand, click on option. You can now see all of the available options from there. Click and you see all of the available options from here. You can play around with any of these tools, play around with them. There are many more tutorials about Illustrator beneath this particular playlist in our Photoshop. Go to our YouTube channel, click on the playlists tab. You're going to see all playlists. Select on the Illustrator playlist and make sure to watch all videos. You're going to see multiple more videos. We talked about multiple more tools, as you can see from here. Okay, the essence of this is to guide you on the introduction, to give you a basic understanding on what you need to do to get started. Let's talk about how to export a file. For instance, we want to export just this logo, not this whole element. Now what we do is look at this very tiny, it's different from Photoshop. Look at this very tiny element called asset export. We're going to drag this element right inside of that element, then put it here. Boom. And we in most cases, if this particular element, remember we talked about grouping. If this element is not grouped, it will be scattered all over the place. Let me show you what that means. So we create one circle, we create another circle, we create another circle, and we want to select all these elements and save them at the same time. So when we push it in here, boom, everything is scattered. What we need to do is to click on this very tiny one here to group them while exporting. So click on this and everything will be grouped as asset number 5. As you can see from there, it's grouped now. So now we can save as we want. So that's the same case as what we have from here. Everything is grouped, that's why we don't have that problem. Now we select on the element assets. We can select on the scaling to select, this is actually makes the element. Remember, this is a vector shape file. Vector shape file doesn't have loose formats, but in most cases, if you put it in a low resolution size, which you created in Photoshop, it's going to blow up. So to avoid that, I would suggest you keep it in 2x scale. Okay, leave the suffix as 2 times. The format, you can select it to save as SVG or PDF. Don't save as PNG. I talked about this in our other tutorial in exports in Illustrator. Okay, so watch that particular tutorial. I talked about the issues you're going to find when you're trying to export images. You can do export as images, but I suggest export elements as PDF or SVGs, then later you drag it into Photoshop, create a layout, drag to Photoshop, and proceed with the rest of the things. So we export as SVG and we hit on export and then select on desktop. Make sure you select on the directory where you want it to be saved, then click on save to folder. Good, we are good to go. We have the SVG file there in the folder and we have the asset from there. I think possibly we can drag this to Photoshop, boom, and we have the image from there. So why I love Photoshop and Illustrator is because these two tools are interchangeable. You can work with the two tools with the elements you saved here. You can just work with it from over here and you won't have much of a problem, especially with their latest version. Photoshop 2022, 2021 works perfectly well with 2023, 2024, 2022 also. Okay, so that's how to export element like this. But what if we want to export all of these elements? We don't need to select all of these things and export it from there. No, that's not how it works. All you need to do is to click on Control Alternative and Save. And from there, we can now select the format we want to save this particular file as. Usually, if it is documents like this, save them as PDF. You only save them as SVG whenever you want to revisit them in Illustrator, or when you want to export them to someone else to continue and edit, possibly for printers and so on. Okay, but you want to use it in Photoshop, save it as PDF. And when we're done with that, give it whatever name you want, and we hit on save. So from here, I've talked about security in PDF. You can watch that tutorial, search for that tutorial. I talked about how to secure or how to encrypt your PDF files in Illustrator. So we're not going to talk about that today. Allow all the options as they are. Click on Save PDF and we are good to go. It's saved. So now we have it in the background. To view that PDF, double click on it and we're going to view our PDF right away. One more thing we didn't talk about, I'm going to talk about that in a little while. So for instance, we want to convert this PDF to images. All you need to do is drag it into Photoshop, drag it to the top layer of Photoshop. Once you drag any element to Photoshop, Photoshop will open automatically. Drag it to the top area of Photoshop and leave it there. It's going to show you two options. Show you number one option and number two option. That's the two layouts which you have available in that particular PDF. So we select on the first one, which is the progression, and we click on OK. It saved that first file, so we can now do the second one. After we're done, we save the image as JPG. Okay, fine. So now why our background is transparent are two reasons. One, we can avoid that by creating another layer like we did in Photoshop in the previous course in Photoshop and add a color in the background. But the problem is that this is not giving us the same size or height as what we have from here. Okay, so to avoid that, we have to create another layer at the back of this particular element, like so. Another layer like this. And we want to do something here, which I want to teach you guys very quickly. So we select on this and we make this white color. When you create an element, click Option on it and click on Arrange. Then click on Send to Back. It's going to go to the back of everything. Once it's at the back of everything, we now have our element as we want it. So whenever we save this file, or even if we just drag all this element like so and drag it into Photoshop, okay, we are going to have that element style as we want. As you can see, we have that element style as it's supposed to appear. Next thing we need to do here is just to reduce the size because it's not in the same format of size as the previous one. Then we hit OK and we have the same size as what we have from there. So make sure you have a layer from the back. Don't be deceived with the layer it creates already as an A4 paper size. Same applies to this other one, and that is it. Next thing I want to teach you guys how to draw a line in Illustrator, which is very important part in Illustrator too. So to draw a straight line like this in Illustrator, select on the line segment tool. Select on that and you can hold the Shift key and draw. When you hold the Shift key, it can give you a straight line from a particular aspect. You get a point. So we draw like so, and we don't need to add the line color from here. You add line color from this particular one, this one now, this second one beneath. Let me show you. If you add here, you are adding the fill color. A fill color is this. We talked about this in other courses. I don't need to talk about this again and again. Okay, let me show you very quickly with this box. So this color you see inside of this box is called the fill. That's the color we see from here. Whenever we want to select this color from the back, we are selecting the stroke color. Stroke color is the color around the box. So we select a stroke color of orange color and we enable it. You see now we have the stroke color of orange. Now we can hide the fill color and make that particular space empty and leave only the stroke color. And we can still do the same thing with stroke color by clicking on this hide element from the bottom part. And we see we hide it. When we select and unhide it again by selecting on the white color, we can select on the stroke color and hide it again. And we have this particular element like so. So whatever one we select, we can now start adding color to it. Select on this one, we can start adding color to it. That's one way to add color to stroke or fill. Another way to do that is from the top layout from here. Okay, from this particular angle. So we select on this, we select on whatever color we want to add, fill color. But make sure you select on the element first. Then you can do that right away. I hope you get that point very quickly. So whenever we want to draw a line, it's very simple. Select on the element, hold on the Shift key. You can still draw a line without holding on the Shift key, but you don't have a specific angle to, it doesn't snap to a particular perfect line shape. So hold on the Shift key to snap. Look what happens. You get a point? It snaps to a particular aspect. So it allows you to draw a very perfect shape line around the angle of a star. So that's how to draw a line. Draw a line like so. You can reduce the size of the line by clicking on the stroke element. From here, you can increase the size of the line. From here, you can reduce the size of the line. And by the way, this color have a very bad contrast. And as you know, I hate bad contrast. So fine, we have this circle. We can increase and reduce the size from here. And if you click option from this particular angle, we can get more options. Click on show options. We have more other options. Okay, so this one I will make this edge, these two edges. Let me just show this clearly. Make these two edges rounded. As you can see, it's rounded, it's not rounded. It's popped out, it's rounded, and we are cool. Okay, so those are basic things you need to know from there. Forget about all of these ones. All of these ones are not going to show on a stroke. You're not going to notice this. Next thing, you can make it a dashed line from here. You can make a dashed line from this particular angle. You can give it the dashed line how many counts you want. If you want dashed line to be a few, if you want the dashed line to be more, the more you reduce the dashed line, the more the dashed line becomes. You get the point. So that's how to add dashed lines to elements. You can do this for strokes. All strokes, whether they are in box or whatever. The next thing you can do is to make sure a part is an arrow sign. You can do that. Then you can use the selection tool to pull this around, play around with this one, whatever way you want to do it. But we're going to come to this in the future. The next thing I want to teach you is the profiling. You can select on any profile style you want from here. For instance, you want the edge to be pointed and the center to be thick. You select on the profile size, and by the way, to use this one you have to reduce the size of that particular element to get a very subtle styling, a very ending styling from that particular base. So those are basic things we need to know for Illustrator. Okay, for beginners, I think these tutorial guides to the best of it. We'll be pulling out some more tutorials on each and every one of these tools, one after the other. I'll be breaking them down from the coming courses in graphic design so that you guys will understand better what is going on from here. Photoshop and Illustrator is very easy to learn, but you must have to drop every other tool you are using and focus on them before you learn and understand them. These are not tools that you just jump into while you are using CorelDRAW or Affinity Designer or GIMP and using all those tools together. No. If you want to learn Illustrator, you need to dump all these other tools at least for 2 or 3 months. Then you will get very used to it. But if you are new to design, congratulations. It is very easy for you to learn Illustrator and Photoshop with our 2 simple playlists, which will be in the description of this video. So find those playlists, watch them carefully again and again and again and again until you understand every little bit of it. Many beginners have actually scaled with this playlist. I'm talking about the old playlist. This one is our 2023 beginner's guide, and I think we touched a little thing in a little more advanced way for beginners to, or a little more simpler way for beginners to understand. And by the way, my name is Manuel from Kata Studios. I'll meet you again in the next one.